Welcome to the Bullpen Show, powered by Architect Sports and Carolina's Counseling for Athletes. I'm your host, Austin Alexander. I got a couple of guests I'm going to introduce in just a moment. We're real excited to have with us for this version of the Bullpen Show. I first want to mention a couple of things that are on our website, thediamondprospects.com. If you haven't seen it yet, the watch list is updated, all the stats for all the top players across the state. If their coaches have sent them in to us, we've got them listed for you guys to enjoy. All the region standings up to date as far as we can tell are also on our website. Plenty of information from the Forest Acres Classic from last week. We were on the ground there for 4 days and were able to capture a bunch of what we saw. All that is for your viewing pleasure as well. We've got guys on the ground throughout this week. Obviously, playoffs are right around the corner. We're covering games as much as we can get to. The weather is outstanding. We're trying to get out every night. All that information, again, is on thediamondprospects.com. I also want to bring up our showcase. It's going to be coming up the 1st of June. All that information is on the website. That's an open event for anybody, the first 150 kids that sign up for that. That'll be for us to be able to evaluate players, but also college coaches and pro scouts will be in attendance as well. All that information on thediamondprospects.com. I want to halt right there because I'm excited to bring in our two guests. These are two guys that I've known for a while, dating back to our time in the Tar Heel State, and now both these guys are on South Carolina soil. First, I want to bring in Hal Bagwell from Indian Land High School and Travis Poole from Blythewood High School. Coach Bagwell, how are you today?
Great, Austin. I appreciate you having me.
And Coach
Good
Poole?
to see you.
Great, Austin. Again, just to ditto what he said. I appreciate you having us on.
Absolutely. Well, both of you guys I want to start with the milestones both of you guys have reached most recently. In the last month, both of you guys have hit some pretty big numbers in the coaching profession. Anytime you start creeping into something 100, it begs some attention. Coach Bagwell first, 2 weeks ago, you reached right there at the 600 mark. And just before that, Coach Poole, you reached the 500 mark. Just want to kind of talk to both of you guys. Coach Bagwell, you first kind of give us an idea of what that meant for you, not just that night, but as you reflect back on 600 victories, what that meant to you and maybe even your family as well.
Well, I'm really old. Takes some longevity. First thing I thought about were all the great players that put us in position to do that and accomplish that throughout. Support from administration trickled down to the parents, to the communities we've been in, and just all that together. I get a few breaks, probably more than we deserved. And, I did mention this, and I think it'd be appropriate to do so. When I first started, we won our first game. My dad always wanted to know, what are your goals? And I'd never really thought about that, but I made a decision then to kind of look at it, and 500 was the number. And he said, well, if you stay with it and treat people right, manage them right, be fair, he said, you'll get you 500. He said, but I want you to try to be elite, and 600 would be elite. That's what made it really special to me. God rest his soul. Great man. And I am sure he was looking down that night.
Coach Poole, same question to you.
Yeah, I think, over the years, you get an opportunity to touch a lot of kids' lives. You get to go through some things, 500 wins. You look at all the great coaches to ever coach this game and be part of the game. That was kind of a number that when you reach it, you can kind of look back and it kind of puts you in a league with some of the best to ever do it. And I think it takes, of course, great players, takes good administration to back you in your vision. And also, it takes good players and they're willing to work hard and play hard. But yeah, it was an exciting day. And as always, as long as I get to chase Al Bagwell, I'm in good spirit.
Well, you're not that
Yeah.
far behind him. Obviously, both of you guys reaching those milestone numbers, that's quite an impressive feat, which means you've had to evolve with the times too. And we didn't really talk about this pre-show, but I would like to kind of get you guys' candid take on how players are different. The game is a little different. And of course, the people that you coach, the guys that suit up in uniform every day at practice and then games, how they're a little bit different. I'd like to get your take on what it is like now versus maybe when you first started, Coach Bagwell.
Well, I'll say this. I want to apologize to all of my guys in the 90s of what I didn't know, but what I thought I knew. Truly have grown. I'm a reflection guy, and I'm always pretty hard on myself. But what we do now compared to what we did then, not even close. As far as the players, I don't think they've changed at all. I don't think the players have changed one bit. And of course, our expectations here have never changed. We're going to hold kids accountable, demand some things, maybe more than they've ever been accountable for in their entire lives. Well, we're going to continue to do that. I think the biggest change is the social media piece. And I was the guy way back. Well, when it first started, I was the no way. I wouldn't allow them to have any, no Twitter, no X, no Instagram, nothing. And I've looked at it the last probably 5 years and said, you know what? We've embraced it. It promotes the kids. There's nothing wrong with that. It does help with the recruiting process, especially with what Diamond Prospects does, Austin. And it really just is something that we've grown into and we've taken that as a program and really run with it. But that's really the biggest difference. The kids are kids. Kids are going to do what you allow them to do. And so we have certain, we don't have many rules, but policies that we abide by. And, if they don't, we're going to hold them accountable and we're going to love them. But at the same time, sometimes it's tough love, hard love.
What I want to kind of know is just kind of sitting right here, finishing up region play, and you guys have some big region games coming up. Both of you do. Talk about the back end of your regular season schedule, and of course, where you see your team going into the playoffs right now, Coach Poole.
I mean, this group I got right now, one thing I'll say about them, and it's like I told them before practice yesterday, and I tell everybody, this group, they practice hard, they play hard, and they pull for each other. And that's a good chemistry to have. We've won some games, late, which shows some resiliency for our kids, not giving up. They'll play to the first out of the game. I think at the end of the day, when we look at our schedule, we're kind of where we wanted to be. We have a tough region opponent this week, 2 games against Sumter. And then we got Lexington on Friday night for game 3. And then we play Lexington again next week. And we got Camden on the schedule and finish up with two region games against Ridgeview. And I think Coach Bagwell would agree, and all baseball people, teams that get hot at this time of the year normally make a run. So it's important to stay with where you're at, and hopefully you get hot and get those timely hits when you need them at this time of the year.
Well, as you mentioned, you got some big games coming up, region and out of region this week, Coach
Yes.
Poole. Well, Coach Bagwell, last week you had games that didn't necessarily count against your region, but obviously big games for your team in terms of getting an idea of where you're at when you're at the Forest Acres Classic. You guys had a really nice showing there. Tell us how that week propelled you into, what you got to do region-wise, and then, of course, going into the playoffs as well. How that propelled you last week.
Yeah, so I'll start with our preseason down there, which was great. River Bluff and Lexington did an outstanding job of hosting that great tournament. And so those were 4 really, really, really tough games, obviously, that got us ready. And then, you take the spring break where we played down at Andy's place in the Forest Acres, and there were 4 more, so there's eight teams that, to me, all had really good arms, well coached. It was competitive throughout. And I just, we set that up by design to get us ready. We hope for a good run in May. We struggled a little bit early, and, personally, we'd rather struggle then than in May. So we want to be hot, like Travis said, when it counts. And so we start up with Clover last night. First of all, our region 3, I think it's very, very good, top to bottom. Certainly no easy games. We play a 3-game series, so our goal is to win 2 or 3. If you win 2 or 3, you win the region. So last night was a big win for us against a very talented arm, Aiden Smith with Clover. So we took them, and we will try to get one of the next 2 Wednesday, Friday, and then next week we'll go to a really well coached, tough Fort Mill, again 3-game series. And then we end with Northwestern for a 3-game set. So down the stretch again, taking that preseason, taking the spring break, ups and downs, and putting it together these next 3 weeks is big for us. I mean, we experienced, to a very talented Brian Hucks, Lexington club, a 9-2 lead in the 7th, and we lost on a walk-off 10-9. Not really much to say about that other than to give them the credit they deserved. To tell our kids the great thing about baseball is that we got one tomorrow the next day, which we did. And then, of course, against Andy's team, AC Flora, great coach, does a great job. They tied the thing in the 7th with 2 outs, and, we had the 4-2 to stay with it, stick with it, and win it in our bottom half. So we saw the ups, the downs. We got some kids. We had some kids that played for us that typically wouldn't play in a 4-game set. You're going to have players step up and do that. So we found out we had a little more depth, hopefully, that we're going to continue to work in our rotations, maybe back end, just to give us more opportunities down the stretch where we might need those guys. So it's been great. And I think we're in pretty good position right now. We're getting healthy finally. And I like our chances, 2 or 3 if we play well.
Obviously, both of you guys had very good clubs. Both of you had to deal with some pitching issues to guys at the top of the food chain for you that you've had to kind of work around. And like you said, Coach Bagwell, rely on some other folks to help you get through. But both you guys have done a super job, a master's job, I guess, of coaching through the adversity, which always you can count on over the length of any season, I'm sure. It looks like you guys are both firing on full cylinders going into the playoffs. Look forward to following both your clubs. And around the playoff time, one of the things that always comes up, and this year no different, would be the format for 5A in South Carolina. But I want to go back for a moment. Both of you guys have strong North Carolina ties. In fact, the bulk of your careers have been on the north side of that border, where the North Carolina playoffs are much different. If you could, for those folks that are maybe unaware of that, first kind of give us a little bit of a history lesson on how it works in North Carolina, and then maybe some of the things that you like or dislike about the format here in South Carolina. So kind of a loaded question, but Coach Bagwell, I'll kick it to you first. Kind of give us an idea of what it's like up there, and then of course spin it down to how that changes maybe how you manage with the South Carolina format.
Well, first of all, let me say there's great baseball in North Carolina, as you know, really talented coaches, talented players throughout. Travis and I work tirelessly to use and try to utilize the same format that South Carolina currently has, meaning North Carolina was one and done, okay, until you got to a regional final. And so that's when the 2 or 3 started, and then the finals were 2 or 3. A couple things about that format that I won't say it's unfair, but it's very difficult when it's one and done. As you know, from a competitive standpoint, regardless of your seeding, if the opponent, regardless of what seed, has a guy, and there are a lot of guys, right? And let's say you got a team 12 and 12, but that guy, their ace who's committed or signed with a Power 5 school, you're getting him game 1, and he's got 9, 10 wins on the year. You're in for a barn burner and could very easily beat you. 2016, that happened to us. And, had that been a double elimination with depth, which I think the South Carolina format allows, I think it allows, and I don't want to say this the wrong way, but for the top team to truly come out of it. In other words, you look at our region, the way we do 3 games, that gives you a true assessment, especially with the pitch count now, of who the best team is typically. So back to North Carolina, and that it just it was very difficult and a lot of pressure there to win 4 games before you started 2 or 3. Compared to South Carolina, love the format. I love that they give classifications options. Okay. Like we haven't had the same format until I believe it's coming in next year, where I think they voted on that. But, it used to be we got to give feedback based on what we wanted to do as a classifications. The 5A D2 classification last year was different, I believe, than some of the other classifications, which I liked, just to have input. And in North Carolina, as much as Travis and I tried to get that through, I think they valued our input, but they never, obviously never changed it. And it would have taken some date changes, maybe to back up the start times and maybe do away with conference tournaments. That's one thing in North Carolina, I think, that holds them up for a week. They do conference tournaments, and the state association is big on continuing to allow that for a lot of reasons. But that's one thing we don't do in South Carolina that I like, and I think it gives us the opportunity to do the format we're currently in.
Now, Coach Poole, obviously you spent most of your time in North Carolina as well. You mentioned the single elimination, at least in the early rounds. What was your take on it then? And of course, how do you like the format that we have now?
I mean, I'll go back to when I first started, and Hal, I remember this when only 32 teams got in North Carolina. You could literally finish second in your league, and I think and be 20-2 and not make the playoffs a lot of times in North Carolina back in the day. That situation when he was at South America at one point, a very good club and didn't get in. So then they changed a little and they got more teams in, which, again, ditto on what he said. You just when you're playing in North Carolina and you run into that guy, and you take a team who is 12 and 12, or could be even 10 and 14, but they got a guy and he toes the rubber, and all of a sudden they get a little momentum and they're the underdog. We all know how that plays out. And then the team that's favored, they tighten up a little bit, and next thing you know, you're in a tough game, tough situation. And sometimes there's teams that's come out on the losing end, and a team moves on that in a 3-game series would have no chance to win 2 out of 3. So I think, with the format that we do here, and I know ours is a little different in different than Howe's is in 5A a year ago. I like the 2 out of 3. I think, and we talked a little bit about it, if you get the first round bye, there's some good to it because you're saving bowls, but at the same time, you set as many as 8, 9 days before you play again. So I think, everything can be tweaked a little. The one thing I will say about South Carolina is they do value your input, and they do make changes. And, it's like how I was saying in North Carolina when we tried. I'm not saying they didn't listen to us, but I have to reiterate what he said about the conference tournaments. That was one thing we tried to, but for some schools, that is a huge deal in conferences, is a conference tournament. And so therefore that takes up a whole week on the back end of your season that, some little changes could have been made. But the way they do in South Carolina, the 2 out of 3 goes to me. I think your better team is normally going to win in a 2 out of 3 series. So I would say never change a 2 out of 3 series in a playoff atmosphere so that you don't run into that guy because, there's plenty of schools even down here that are, what I would call, you know, 12 and 12, 500 teams, but they got a guy that could beat anybody in the state. And you don't want to get that guy opening round of playoffs and all of a sudden you're done because of one arm. So, I do like the way that South Carolina's got it set up.
One of the things, now that we're getting close to the playoffs, we'll probably talk a lot more about playoffs and playoff formats and the teams that make the playoffs. Last year, it was my opinion that too many teams made the playoffs because there were some teams that snuck in and basically created non-games, even in that 2 out of 3 format for some of their opponents. If you were commissioner for a day, and people do listen to this show, Coach Poole, what would you tweak? And if it could be your pool and your bracket, what would it look like? Would you eliminate the buys? Would you reduce the number of teams that are in? What would you do?
I think I would attempt to, number one, eliminate the bias. I think for every team to go ahead and play would be important, especially at that time of the year, because we all know when you get to that time of the year, practice can become, you're just trying to figure out how to, get through practice without losing them. Because if you're working on something at that time of the year, you're behind. I think there's some teams that could be eliminated. I think there are a few too many teams in it. So to go to your point, if you look at some of those first round games, there's some big scores. And I think if you could possibly eliminate some of those teams and eliminate the first week bye, a competitive bracket throughout the entire playoff than some of these early rounds you see.
And, with the RPI that we use, we haven't really talked about that yet. It does put an emphasis on the entire season. And so that's why I guess my thinking is, if we're putting an entire season into a capsule and throwing it into RPI, which I guess is a machine that spits out numbers and that's what we'll go by. But I guess, Coach Bagwell, do you like that formula? What would you do differently? How would you do it?
Well, now I could be wrong, but I think we're set up next year with 6-7 for 1 through 8 buys, 9 through 24 play single elimination into a 2 out of 3. I didn't vote for that, but it looks like that's what the league did. And so that's something we're going to have to adopt to. So if you think about, you're coming off of a 3-game series or 2-game series the week before, and then you got to turn around, on a Tuesday and play one. And then if you win that, you got to play Thursday, Friday, and possibly Saturday, 2 out of 3 there. You might have to play 4 games in a week. The schools, like we played in preseason and spring break 4 weeks. So that gives us a little bit of an idea of how to do it, right? These teams that haven't done that, to ask them to possibly play 4 games with that format could be difficult. So if there's anything I would change personally, if I was a commissioner, I would not have a single elimination start off. You take a great region, and we've got some really good regions around this state. You take a 2 in a region that would probably maybe be a 1 in 2 or 3 other regions, and then they're playing a single elimination right out of get-go, and they run into that arm Coach Poole's talking about, and their season's over. But they're a top 10 quality type program, and they don't get a chance to advance. I just think any format we can use where there's more than a 1 game is best suited for all clubs. I really do. And I don't know. I have to sit down and look at it, how to do that based on dates, timing. But that would be one thing. If I were the commissioner, I would put a committee together to give me some options to be able to do that.
Well said. You guys have known each other for a long time. I don't know how you guys are going to answer this question, but I'd like to know how you guys met, how long you've known each other, and maybe some stories that you might tell about the other one. positive stuff, and also, maybe some fun that we can have with one another.
Hey, let me lead off.
Who wants to go first here?
Let me lead off. Yeah, Travis, I'm going to be serious here. And I will say this. So we opened up every game. We were in different regions. They call them conferences in North Carolina, same thing. But we always opened the season against each other. We did it for years and years. And we always knew it was going to be competitive. It was going to be a great game. I don't know who it went to in favor. I believe we got you mostly, Coach. I mean, if you had to really look back at it, we got them most of the time. Every once in a while, they sneak up and get us, and I'm kidding. So I will say this, that Coach Poole is the best game manager that we managed against. And that was true in North Carolina. We've scrimmaged in South Carolina. That dude does the most with the least in any coach I've ever seen and known. And I know that because we're best friends, and I keep up with him and we talk. He does the most with the least, and when he's got players, you can count on him maxing it out, making a deep run, and winning a state title like he's used to doing. I mean, I'm just saying he's very special. I think, honestly, Travis Poole's underrated in a lot of ways, and sometimes he doesn't get the credit he's due, and I hate to be saying this, especially publicly, but I got to give him props on how good he is. Coach, don't let that go to your head, okay? Certainly don't let it go to your head, but I think the world of him personally as a friend. He's been really good to me, always there for advice. You got a small group of people that you run things by in this business, and he's certainly one of them. We got a mutual friend also, Danny Hignite in North Carolina, Providence High School. Run things by those two, but not many more people when it comes to baseball stuff. So just a great guy, okay? Sometimes I got to bring him down from his high horse. I mean, what are you, 17-2 right now, Coach? I mean, come on, man. Like, he's always like 17-2, 18-2, and then he'll tell you how bad they're going to be, but they'll win the region, and he'll be in Final 8, Final 4 guaranteed. There it is.
Coach Poole, that's pretty high praise. Your comeback would be.
Well, first of all, I think the problem is he probably, when he was running his weight room this morning, he ran into a bar and probably hit his head. So he's probably talking a little bit out of himself right now. But, he knows I really appreciate all the kind words from how he's, the thing about him is, and ditto what he said, we played each other opening game every year. And it was so funny because we wouldn't schedule another game, and we would always have to call and go, now, am I at your place or you at my place this year? So it was just a situation where we knew it was going to be game one. And of course, we had some decent players. He had some good players. And it was always, I don't think I ever remember a game being totally more than 5 or 6 runs one way or the other. It was normally a 4-3, 5-4, 2-1 type ball game. So it was always a good game. It was always a good opener. It was always cold. I was never warm because it was that first game in February in North Carolina. Talking about how, I tell you, I've learned probably as much baseball from him as I have anybody. The thing he does is he is probably the most organized person I've ever been around. And he probably don't even realize it. When he talks, I listen because I was told a long time ago the best way to learn was listen. So I listen a lot. And I have taken so many of his things he probably don't even know and used, throughout my career because, I look back and, the winningest coach, one of the winningest coaches ever in the state of North Carolina. Charlotte Mack, he owns Charlotte Mack. I'm able to call him at any time, and he gives me good advice. And I have to, use Danny Hignite too, just like he did, because those are the two people that when there's something really comes to a head, or I need some advice, or how to handle something, those are the first two people I'm going to call because number one, I can trust them, and number two, they're going to give me. They've probably been there and probably had to deal with it. In fact, Al and I talked about a situation about some players, spring break, this, that, and the other, about 2 weeks ago. And it was just, we run it by, how do you handle this? Because going back to another question, we are in a different era today than we used to be when it comes to high school baseball in general. But on the screen with you and I is probably the best baseball guy I've ever been around. And I mean that with all sincerity. And I'm fortunate to be able to call him a true friend, my best friend. That old saying is, you only need 6, 3 on each side. He's one of my 6. I don't know who the other 5 are, but he's one of my 6.
Well said, both of you, and really appreciate you guys sharing that here on our show. Really cool to listen to both of you guys. Obviously, you revere one another. You accomplished a lot, and you still got a lot in the tank. You both have really good teams right now, and are marching down the path of success again this year. And you got a lot more, I'm sure, ahead of you. But when it's all said and done, whenever that time comes, the word legacy is used quite a bit, and I'm sure when you guys do wrap it up at some point, that people are going to say, well, Coach, what kind of legacy did you leave? And when you look back, people say this or say that about you. Coach Poole, when it's all said and done for you, what do you want former players or people that came across your path to say about you?
You definitely want your players to, you look back, you get a chance, and I know Al and I have talked about this a lot. You get a chance to go to weddings. You get a chance to see your former players have their first children. You get to actually see some of their children and coach them over the time. So when when they want to play for you, when they call you for advice, that's the most important stuff. The wins and losses, the friendships you build with your own players over time. Just like I talked to a former player of mine last Wednesday, played for me in 2012. So it's good to catch up with him. He started a new job, wanted to let me know that. So when you go through your whole career, when you walk away, you would hope your players would thank you for everything you did, whether it be those hard times. But I've never had children. And the one thing I can say is that I've had a lot of children, I feel like, as players that I get the chance to continue to grow with over time, continue to keep in contact with over time, watch what great things they've done in life. And then on the other side of that, you would hope that the teams you play know that when your club comes, that they're going to be prepared, that you're not just throwing a guy out there, that you're going to cover everything from A to Z, and that the game is going to be played well, and that your team's going to be respected. I think that's the biggest thing for me is I want people to think our players are respectful and they play the game the right way.
Coach Bagwell, what does the term coach mean to you, and what do you want your legacy to be?
Wow. Well, I'm a little worried about this day and time only because so Travis and I, they say old school. And here's the deal. If setting high standards and holding players accountable to those standards is old school, then I guess I'm old school. But to back up legacy, I'll say this, like I agree with everything Travis said. A few things come to mind for me. So yeah, we've been fortunate enough to have 3 major leaguers, which will make any coach look good. That the one thing with those guys is, and I learned this a long time ago. We had a first rounder at South Mecklenburg. Actually, it was a sandwich pick. Chris Jones, San Francisco Giants, 36 pick overall. Never made it to the major leagues, but had arm talent obviously at that point in his young career. We left him alone, and I will say that that's one of the best coaching jobs I think I ever did was to leave him alone. And then we had a 12-year major league veteran, Alex Wood. Obviously, we just had to tell him what day he was pitching and which way to throw it, and he was going to get it done. Obviously, a great talent there, a generational talent. So my point is we've had that, maybe 20 overall draft picks. And the only reason I say that is because we're proud of those guys, okay? And we were proud to coach them, but they could have played anywhere, Austin. They could have played anywhere, and they still would have been that talent, and they still would have signed and been drafted. So I've never, ever thought that it was because of me or us and our system. We were just blessed to have them. But I tell you, my point is I'm proud of them, but I'm also proud of, we have 9 doctors. Now, I started a long time ago, and some of them are retired now. 9 doctors. I'm not saying I would let them operate on me, for God's sakes, but we have 9 of them. And it's those same ones that have been successful that I had to run down and may have been skipping class, or that I had to send home because he was late for practice. And so we got a couple Fortune 500 like CFOs. We've got CEOs. We've got retired wealthy, people. We've got, every player we've ever had that has come to us and graduated from high school has been successful, whether it be military, whether it be, business, whatever. We've got cops. I've got I'm getting ready to have one be a chief of police. Okay. So I'm making sure he knows when I drive through there, he lets everybody know who I am. But the point is this, okay? To know all of that means I've had really good relationships with them. I think the initial relationship that you have with these kids, the 4 years with you, it's not even close to what that relationship is after they graduate, okay? When they're with us, this is me speaking, I'm sure coaches the same way. They're not our friends. Now, we're going to treat them fair, but we're going to hold them accountable, okay? And we're going to put them at a standard, and there's going to be tough times and tough love. But once they leave us, okay, we want them to come back and say, you know what, coach, appreciate everything you did for me. I didn't know it then, but I know it now. I got a text from a kid from one of my 1997 teams last week out of the blue. Said, Coach, I want to thank you. I am now 365 days recovered, no alcohol. Now, let me tell you, first of all, congrats to him. Second of all, for him to reach out to me, and I haven't spoken to him in almost 30 years, meant a great deal to me. That meant as much to me as Alex Wood's debut in 2013's, as Jack Reinheimer's in 2017, and Trent Thornton's whenever that was. That text meant as much as me watching those guys debut in the major leagues. And that's something that, as a coach, you get to carry those relationships with you, okay? And here's the thing. You got players you can lean on and call, and that, the ones that you hope bought in and did the right things, they'll help you too. So it's kind of a great thing to be a coach, because you got that connection that other people don't have, that have never coached. Travis and I have been fortunate enough to have and continue to have for the rest of our lives. So that's why we do it, really. It's for the kids. And if you win a few, hopefully you win more than you lose, but it ultimately comes down to those relationships and their well-being. The last thing I'll say is, we want our kids, when they leave us, okay, to be the 90%. We always go 90-10. Are you going to be the 90% of society who does nothing and watches everybody, the other 10%, okay, kick ass? Or are you going to be that 10% that gets it done? Which one are you going to be? We try to teach them to be that 10% that gets it done and makes a difference in society.
Very well said. While maybe the number, the 500 or the 600 is what got local attention and maybe statewide attention for all the wins, it really is much more than that. I can tell with both of you, it's the relationships, and it's everything behind the scenes that matter to both of you. So I appreciate you guys really sharing deep down how you feel about not only the game of baseball, but also the people that surround you, whether it be the dugouts or it is the bus rides, it's the restaurants, it's the relationships long after they're gone. I appreciate you guys really put the stories to all of that. Very well said, both of you. Well, before we go here, I just want to thank you guys both again for hopping on and being able to rearrange your schedules and get on the same page so we can hook up for 45 minutes and talk a little bit. Before we roll here, just want to give you guys a parting shot. You got the floor. Keep it as brief as you can. So for those folks that are still listening to us right now, but Coach Poole, just a couple minutes. What you got? Parting shot.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Austin, and for everything you do for the game of baseball in this entire area. You're out. Your guys are out all the time. I know you're very well respected around here in the game. And so first of all, I want to appreciate everything you do. Secondly, Al Bagwell, being a great friend as I have, as he is and always will be, it's my honor to be on here with him along with you. And I really appreciate, again, everything you do. I hope that, a month from now that I'm calling him and we're both still playing.
Coach Bagwell?
Ditto, no doubt. So Austin, again, now, Austin, we know this. I don't know if, nobody else probably knows it, but Austin was at Elon, and when I was at South Mac, great coach, and made a move down here, and has taken that, with Diamond Prospects. And I ditto what Coach Poole said. Really good baseball man, good baseball people, good evaluators. I would just say this, that they do a lot for kids. If you're listening for the first time, I would say trust Diamond Prospects. I would say look at their camps, look at their elite stuff, look at everything they do to give your son an opportunity, because, I've never played or coached a player. There aren't many of them that don't want to play at the next level. And his setup and the way they do it certainly helps that with true evaluation. So, again, Austin, thanks for having me. And with Coach Poole, I do feel honored to be on here with you, Coach. I'll go back to it again and say this. Probably, and look, it's hard to win 500 games and multiple state titles and be considered underrated. But I do think he's an underrated guy. I think he gets overlooked a lot. But you look up, and he's always winning the conference or region, and he's always making a deep run. And I'm just telling you guys, when he has talent, he knows how to maximize that talent. And that is one of the things that I envy with him. I've had many a club where we've had superior talent and we just fell short for whatever reason. I've never really known Coach Poole to fault anything he's done, especially with baseball. And I'll tell you this, it was either the 12 or 13 state championship for him. We beat them 13-0 at our place. They were 1-5 or 6, Coach. Wasn't good.
1-6.
1-6. They ended up winning a state title that year. Okay. So don't count this guy out for anything, no doubt. And Coach, I hope to talk to you when we're both deep. And really, we probably won't have time to talk too much because we're working hard on the details and trying to get prepped for that opponent. But afterward, at some point, he and I are going to sit down and have a beer. I can promise you that.
I appreciate it, guys. I really appreciate the endorsement of DP, and really enjoyed hearing you guys talk about one another, but also really what the man behind obviously all the victories and all the success you guys have had between the lines. Congratulations once again on all that success. Number 500, Coach Poole. Number 600, Coach Bagwell. But I appreciate your friendships, and I appreciate you guys making time for us today on the Bullpen Show. So that wraps it up for us. Just a quick reminder, I want to thank our sponsors, our partners, Architect Sports, Carolina's Counseling for Athletes. Appreciate those folks, and thediamondprospects.com. This year, there's a ton of baseball going on. We're seeing as much baseball as we can. We chronicle it. It's all on our websites. You won't read just standings. You want stats. You want to see where we were the night before. We got it. Also, all of our social media on Twitter, X, on Instagram. We're trying to evolve just like you guys did and had to come around with the social media. So have I, and so have we. So you can find us there. A lot of baseball being played, and we look forward to seeing what's next. So again, Austin Alexander, just want to thank both of our guests, Hal Bagwell and Travis Poole. Thank you guys for coming on, and we'll see you guys at the ballpark again real soon.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you, Austin.